Sometimes it stays outside there and it doesn't get into the studio, but it's here in the studio. Join us in this discussion. If you're listening to us online, contribute via our Facebook wall. Send your comments or questions, and you'll get answers from the panel in the studio. If you are listening to us and you have your mobile phone next to you, send those messages 6933, regardless of network on which you will get them, read them on air. Good, but you're trying to chip in on what Norbert was raising, but I have a couple of questions to raise to you. First, finish the thought.
Yeah, no, I think I just wanted to make one point that right now where we are, really, I think what you see in terms of failure in job creation, failure in expanding the economy, because the economy has only been growing, but it is not expanding to be able to create jobs, is for me really an issue of leadership. First of all, we have a big government. We have grown government so big that the whole thing has become inefficient, that it cannot really plan anything very smart, very strategic. So we keep on doing peripheral things.
Godber, if you can cut in there on the big government. I did have a discussion a couple of years ago with someone I should respect, Professor Ephraim Kamuntu. He was on the side of those people who justified the subdivision of Bushenyi district into the 5 districts. His justification was, look, you have 5 extra RDCs. Every RDC has a driver. He has an assistant. There is a political mobilizer. There is a cow. There is all that structure. Isn't this sucking up unemployed Ugandans?
Excuse me, Charles. We are talking about people who are engaged in employment, doing jobs that add value to the economy.
Yes, and if we go back to where did we want to go, does that create for you your integrated, independent, self-sustaining?
Adding
an
RDC or a deputy RDC or a chairman LC5 or a councillor take you towards building an integrated self-sustaining economy.
National economy.
It buys you longevity and power, and that's about all.
But just in 2008, I published one of my many of those researchers. I said, you know, if you consider for once Uganda as a corporation where performance is measured on the basis of return on investment, if there was a next meeting of the shareholders, it would be the stormiest in this country's history. The chief executive officer, who is the president, who is credited with saving the corporation from potential liquidation 23 years ago, would be facing new questions about his ability to bring sustained dividends to the shareholders. The current board of directors, the members of parliament who are supposed to supervise the running of the company, would be facing tough questions about their performance. Because at every board meeting, the shareholders allowed members of the board, with the consent of the CEO, to increase remuneration because of their hard work and sacrifice, in quotes.
If this corporation was headed by a man called Ibrahim Abramovich,
who is
Chelsea, Abramovich at Chelsea, he would have fired 8 CEOs by now, because he's going
actually, that's what I said. That's what I said. With this balance sheet, now with Uganda's balance sheet, the shareholders would be outraged, and the resolution demanding action against both the CEO and the members of the board would be circulated in advance of the meeting. And I think that's where we have a problem, that the government is the way the government is configured now, it really has no discipline to be able to think about the big things and do the big things. So the president is there. He's a loner now. So he's the one. Yes, he's the one who is thinking of, like, you know, investing in energy, investing in these big projects. But actually, when you look below the surface, the institutions that are supposed to be planning and helping him to do the job, actually, as Chairman Mao said, they have really been demobilized. I think there is a crisis of confidence in all these institutions, that you are really not able to move forward, because
are these people simply incompetent? Or simply uninformed to advise the president?
No, they are not incompetent. I think there is no leadership, because you see, all these countries, if you take Singapore, you had the president mobilizing all the institutions and the individuals there, and providing them with the leadership to be able to take Singapore. Now is that we've invested so much in building the political patronage network that is what matters.
Yep.
In fact, one of my
And
arguments...
that's what is funded.
Yes, and that is what is funded. Because one of my arguments is that right now there is a difference between the government and something called the regime. The government is the formal government institutions that are supposed to run a state. It's your ministries, it's your statutory bodies. But there's also a regime which is created around State House, which is more or less like a parallel government. And actually the government has more or less like been captured by the regime. So the government keeps on guessing. It keeps on guessing the regime. What are they thinking? What do they want to do? Someone who is seated in the National Planning Authority probably wants to figure out what the president is thinking before they can even plan something. So there is that institutional, maybe I could call it institutional. The institutions have more or less like laid back because nobody wants to take responsibility. By the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me take some feedback from our listeners, and we'll be responding some of these comments. Kongot Herbert Epu says the youth fund would be favorable to us, the youth, but the conditions that one must have an account shows to me that this fund is meant to help the already well-off youth, because we thought that money would benefit us in a way of opening up businesses. They should first revise their conditions. Otherwise, it's a good approach to reduce unemployment among the youth.
Just very quickly, most probably a youth who doesn't have a bank account or can't open a bank account is unlikely to do a job that creates jobs.
Okay. Lovis Walter says no improvement. Youth are supposed to be trained as job creators, not job seekers. Otherwise, it will be the same story till Museveni retires. That's the biggest question. People are saying the youth who are being produced, whether from Makerere or from elsewhere, are unemployable. You must have met a lot of this, Norbert, some of these, to try to help out with your campaign, or those who are coming to you saying, please connect us to a job. The skills do not match the paper qualifications that some of the youth are carrying.
I know people who are lecturing IT in our universities, but they will not set up a computer network for the monitor. If you invited them, they don't know head and tail of it. I have seen NADS coordinators who cannot advise me on how to deal with cassava mosaic. They don't even. I told them how can I design a greenhouse. So the truth of the matter is that our education system is partly to blame. But
how did the education system go wrong? Because if you go to what Jackie said at the beginning, our failure to plan leads us to fail. If the job creation ideals that we had 25 years ago were not followed, how would an education system, because that would be part of the integrated self-sustaining national economy. You say within the next 10 years we'll be producing these kinds of people to do these kinds of jobs. So they come out of college, they find jobs they are able to do. If they come out of, if you had people going, you don't have the jobs planned, you don't have the people qualified to do those jobs. So they come out and they flood you on the streets and they begin looking around for anything to do.
First and foremost, we need a new work ethic. That is critical.
Where do you find it? Where do you get it from?
We have got to cultivate it. We have got to cultivate it. Every year I host 2 to 3 undergraduates from Yale University as interns. Now, when we go for a seminar, sometimes I go along with them and they write reports, they are rapporteurs. They have a draft report at the closure of the seminar. Now, we have been having this National Consultative Forum. I can bet my left hand that the rapporteur's report is not going to come before 2 weeks. Now, work ethics is number one. Secondly, here we think if you're educated, then you don't work. People work for you. You know, one of the richest men in the world, he still mows his own lawn. He drives himself. The crisis is limited targets. Professor Mamdani calls it the 1, 2, 3, 4 syndrome. 1 wife, 2 children, 3-bedroom house, and a 4-wheel drive car. Arrivalism. Many of our people, they think the moment you are educated, then you become a permanent lodger who is a burden on the state. The state should start looking for you, after you. So the entire philosophy of our education system needs to be changed. People must learn how money is made. Otherwise, how come that people who we think have money, the moment they lose the job, they are on the streets? Members of parliament who were ejected in the last election are already running on borders. Their houses are being auctioned. They are commuting with the rest of us in the taxis. Where are those 4-wheel drive cars? There's something wrong. Ministers are begging to remain ministers. Eria Kategaya tried being a practicing advocate.